Welcome friends to another 40k video. Today we pick up the story with Fulgrim after the events of the drop site massacre. So filled with self-hatred at killing his paramount brother, Fulgrim allows a demon from the warp to take over his body. His sons notice the difference and have to take down and defeat their own paramount. Let's pick up things from there. Orders from Horus are ignored by Fulgrim, who instead decides to assault a resource world of the Mechanicus. This is questioned by Eidolon, and when this happens, the Primarch kills his once favoured son by removing his head. Elsewhere, the champion of the Emperor's children, Lucius, notes this as a further sign of his Primarch's erratic and changed behaviour. Lucius feels his Primarch is different. He has mood swings, he shows no love for the camaraderie he once did, and he can't recall the past, even in events where he was there. And when he sees him fight, Lucius identifies a weakness in his father's sword-fighting technique that was not there before. And he also observes Fulgrim using demonic powers. So Lucius goes to La Fenice, which is the opera chamber where the Emperor's children were woken by the performance of music before them, the potential of chaos. And it's there Lucius finds the portrait that had been painted for that event, a glorious picture of his father in all his splendour. Lucius had been seeing this place in his dreams, and seeing the painting with his own eyes, he knows that his Primarch is trapped within the painting, and that there is a creature from the warp within his father's body. So, he convenes the Brotherhood of the Phoenix, a meeting of the senior members of the Legion. Lucius tells them what he thinks, and admits it sounds preposterous. Fabius says he wants to know more. "You must have seen it, brothers," said Lucius, as Damon began swinging his maul around his head in tag arcs. The Phoenician speaks, but it is not his voice. He tells of our glorious battles like he wasn't even there. He barely remembers the war against the Lair, and the victories of which he does speak sound like he reads them from a history book. A demon, that's it. You all saw what they could do in La Fenice, the powers they have. Lord Fulgrim has such powers now. I observed it. I saw him unleash a curse upon the Mechanicum battle engine on Prismatica. Its shields were down, and without even touching it, he caused every living thing inside it to grow and mutate in a storm of flesh that ripped the war machine apart from the inside. Lord Fulgrim was mighty, but even he wasn't that powerful. Only the Crimson King has such powers. Fabius also confirms that he has seen some changes. He gives an example, a change in the composition of his flesh and blood. Replied Fabius, "It is as though his molecular structure has begun to dissolve the bonds linking its constituent parts into a cohesive whole. What could cause such a thing?" Fabius shrugged. "Nothing of this world," he said with a grin of dreadful appetite. "It is quite fascinating, you understand. It is as though his form is preparing for some great ascension, a wondrous shedding of a redundant form, as his flesh is remade into something extraordinary." "And you never thought to mention this?" asked Lucius, still very much aware of the blade at his throat. "It was too soon to speak," snapped Fabius. "I do not pause in my observation as you would not pause in the midst of a duel." "You mean you believe him?" asked Marius, his stretched face unable to hide the revulsion he felt at the thought of their master's body being hijacked by another. "I do," said Fabius, and so they lay in ambush for him. "Take him," bellowed Julius. Marius, Barocian, unleashed a barrage of shrieking reverberations from his canyon. Statues split under the sonic assault, and Lucius felt a delicious frisson throughout his body as the aural blast waved through him to the flagstones of the gallery. Fulgrim staggered under the impact, his robes ripped from his body, and the tearing power of the shockwave. He dropped to one knee. His wreath of golden laurels shattered into thousands of fragments. Beneath his robes, Fulgrim was naked, but for a crimson loincloth, and Lucius marvelled at the almost serpentine fluidity of his body. The fighting was fierce, and ended when Fabius shouted, "Now, Lucius, strike!" and the swordsman cursed the apothecary. As Fulgrim's eyes were now on him, Lucius still felt that he would die facing his Primarch father's body. Then an energy fist slammed into the Primarch's head, and Marius jammed the end of his sonic cannon into Fulgrim's neck and unleashed a barrage of squalling harmonics that filled the gallery with ear-bleeding noise, and the Primarch father's sword fell. None spoke. None knew what to say. They had taken arms against their Primarch, and they had enjoyed it. Apothecary Fabius broke the spell of their silence. "Fools," he hissed, the lifeless voice of the apothecary. "You would stand gaping like landed fish until he awoke. Fabius turned away and made his way to the arched entrance to his necropolis of freakish surgeries. As he reached the edge of shadow, he turned back to the Legion captains. "Bring him below." They then tried to drive the entity out of Fulgrim's body through various means of torture. The demon takes the pain and talks back to them about the path that he sees for the Legion, and then they try a risky device created by Fabius. Caesarion asks, "We have a task at hand, Apothecary. Can we drive this demon out with pain and give me a straight answer?" Fabius answered without taking his eyes from Lucius, and Lucius met his hostility with a calm approach he felt sure would irritate Fabius. Fabius says, "I cannot. Any mortal body will be destroyed long before we could ever reach the point where a demon would lose its grip. But Primarch's body should survive long enough for us to reach a tipping point where the pain will be sufficient to drive it out. Then perhaps the time has come to use the neural parasite device," said Marius. "The thing you drafted from Diospec hybrid captains." Fabius nodded in agreement, and Lucius saw the Apothecary had been waiting for just such an opportunity. Bending low, he placed the half-helm upon Fulgrim's skull and attached thin lengths of clear plastic tubing to the silvered metal. The tubing coiled across the floor to a humming machine that had been designed by creatures that bore no relation to humanity. It pulsed with a complex series of lights and sounds that existed in realms beyond the auditory perceptions of mortals, and Lucius watched as the iridescent mercury-like liquid pulsed across the clear tubing and into the Primarch. "This had better work," said Caesarion, jabbing Fabius in the chest. "If you have spoken false, none of your fetid elixirs will stop me from killing you." The sparkling liquid entered Fulgrim's body, and the gasp of a sensualist who has at last discovered some sensation as yet unimagined escaped his full lips. Fulgrim's eyes snapped open, and he looked about himself like a dreamer, awakening from golden memories. "Is it working?" Caesarion asked Fabius as he manipulated holographic dials and liquid gorgs with subdermal xenohaptics. "It is," confirmed the Apothecary. "I can alter the biochemistry of his mind to see what I want him to see, feel what I want him to feel. His mind will be ours to command soon." Fabius laughed, then burst into tears, his body convulsing in agony before shuddering with great pleasure. He screamed at invisible terrors and licked his lips as flavors beyond imagining flooded his sensory perceptions. "What is happening to him?" said Marius. "I am assuming control," said Fabius. "His mind is more complex than you can possibly imagine, a million labyrinths twisted within one another. It is no small matter to learn its connections." And with this, 1,000 emotions and sensations warred across Fulgrim's face. Then at last Fulgrim's body relaxed. "I have him," Fabius said, a triumphant grin on his face. "What would you have me do first, Captain? Can you force it to speak truthfully?" "Of course. A manipulation of no consequence," Fabius told him. Lucius frowned at the swiftness of Fabius's assurance, wondering at the ease with which the Apothecary appeared to have mastered what he had described as being nigh impossibly difficult. He slid the all clear of Fulgrim's body and moved around the gurney to stand next to Fabius. Vitae noctus or not, he would kill Fabius if it emerged that he was lying to them. The faces on the Apothecary's long coat flexed as though rising and falling on a jellied tide, and their mute howls implored Lucius to end their suffering. The swordsman ignored them, calculating where best to stab with the awl if he needed to kill Fabius. The Apothecary seemed oblivious to Lucius's presence and worked his fingers over the alien device like a maestro at the keyboard of a Templin organ. Fulgrim danced a jig on the gurney, and his face twisted into a delirious smile as he felt what was being done to him. "Oh, my sons," breathed the Primarch, "you want the truth? How artless of you. Do you not realize that the truth is the most dangerous thing of all? Your time here is at an end, demon," snarled Marius. "You have no place among our legion. You are a thing of evil." Fulgrim laughed and said, "Oh, Marius, you insist on calling me a thing of evil, but such a word is meaningless unless you understand the truth of what good and evil represent. Very well, you wish the truth? I will give it to you. If you accept that the universe is constantly moving towards its final state of perfect complexity, and that this is its inevitable destination, then anything that hinders this process must be defined as evil. By the same logic, anything that promises and promotes this ongoing journey is surely good. I am moving towards that perfect complexity. By hindering my ascension, you are acting in the cause of evil. Alone in this chamber, I am the only thing that is good." Then Fulgrim says, "Have you not seen the truth of it yet?" "The truth of what?" the truth of me. Lucius stepped away from the gurney as Fulgrim's biceps swelled with sudden power, and his right arm tore free of the restraints that bound him to the gurney. Then his other arm came free, and he removed the device that Fabius had attached to him. It fell to the floor of the apothecarian with a wet clatter. "A pity," said Fulgrim. "I was beginning to enjoy that." And it's then Lucius realizes that he has miscalculated, that the creature in the flesh is now their Primarch, and he bows, and Fulgrim releases himself. Fulgrim explains why Lucius thought him an imposter, and says he freed himself. He was possessed for a time, and he was trapped in the painting, but through that Fulgrim learned of warpcraft from the creature, and was then able to use that knowledge to swap places with the demon, and trap the demon in the painting instead. So it was the demon sending Lucius the dreams, and the weakness in the swordsmanship of Fulgrim that Lucius saw had been to get Lucius to challenge him, to teach his son the power of chaos, and his lack of interest in the Legion's history and camaraderie with his sons is a display of who Fulgrim is now. After learning from the demon has changed him, and now wants to go further in the experience of learning, to push his limits, and to do this not for power, but for the journey. And he wants his legion, his sons, to go on the journey with him. On that note, friends, and the surprise of Fulgrim not being the demon in the body of Fulgrim, I'll end today's video.